going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all for being here. My name is Nicole Browning. I am the director of our Partner Services Department here at the Houston Food Bank. And I also serve as co-chair of the Health Equity Collective's Food Security Work Group, alongside Hope Galvan, who I believe is joining us virtually. On behalf of our board of directors, our president, Brian Green, and our executive team, welcome to the largest hunger relief organization in the Feeding America network and in the country in terms of distribution. The Houston Food Bank distributes on average more than 150 million pounds of food each year. And during times of disaster, that number goes up dramatically. The Houston Food Bank serves an 18-county territory and works with over 1,600 community partners to move our mission of food for better lives forward. Now, before we start our presentation today, we have a few housekeeping rules. It worked, yay. For our in-person guests, restrooms are outside this door to the left, near the lockers and in front of the Starbucks. We will be taking pictures throughout this event. So if you do not wish to have your picture taken, please sit on the back left side of the room. I think the table has a sign on it. We will be taking questions and comments at the end of the presentation. And in case of an emergency, we will exit through the main doors of the lobby. For our virtual guests, please stay on mute. All participants are on mute and should stay on mute. If you would like to come off of mute, please use your hand raising feature. We will be taking questions and comments at the end of the presentation, so please use the comment, also known as the chat feature, and we will get your questions answered. Now, I would like to invite Heidi McPherson to come up. Thank you, Heidi.
Good morning, everyone. So great to see you all here in person, and thank you to our guests for joining in the virtual space as well. Very excited to be hosting our first dual event here for the Health Equity Collective. How many guests do we have in the virtual space at this point? 66. So we're a big group. Thank you all for joining. So just wanted to say a few words. I know some of you are actually new to the Health Equity Collective. I see lots of familiar faces, but just wanted to share a little bit of the background of the work that we're doing here together. And to start, our vision of health for all across the greater Houston area, and a mission of establishing an impactful, collective, sustainable, data-driven system to promote health equity. We'll unpack just a smidge of that. And I think our topic here this morning of stigma around food insecurity is really a key systems driver. We've been exploring stigma in the mental health and substance use space as well, and really looking at the way that it impacts equity and access and opportunity in so many different ways. So really looking forward to learning here this morning as well. So quick history, I suppose. The Health Equity Collective emerged from the Clinton Health Matters Initiative, which ended in our region. That was a 5-year effort for those of you who weren't involved. It ended in our region in November of 2018. At this point, we have over 180 organizations and well over 50 other coalitions, place-based, so neighborhood coalitions or topic coalitions like our environmental friends or our housing friends, etc. So very multi-sector. You can see the sectors that are represented there. And UT Health is privileged to be the backbone organization, really facilitating and providing a foundation for this collaborative effort. And I co-lead this alongside Dr. Srila Sharma, who is in our virtual space this morning. And then our many work groups. So we have the effort on food security, which is hosting this event, but also have the whole person care, which is the mental health and substance use, our health and housing effort, our community voice engagement, communications, and then policy for anchoring all of that. And then our task forces are the funded projects, one around building the community information exchange. So that's the technical and data sharing capacity to coordinate care across sectors and organizations. And then the community health worker effort is looking at the human capacity for coordinating care. Key. Data and technology are great, but they're tools. If people don't use them, it doesn't help us out much. And then we host a number of events, so welcome you to join in on those. We have our monthly networking sessions in addition to these different learning, and we'll have more of these learning sessions, and hopefully more events now back in person, now that it feels safer to do so. And welcome you all. You know, this is a collaborative effort, so that means that what you want to get out of it is kind of what you put into it. It's rolling up our sleeves together from your positions, your seats, and figuring out what do we do together to shift the systems so that our work at our organization is more impactful. How do we support each other in the efforts, and how do our efforts complement each other's efforts? So we're always looking for new leaders in the space, and we would love to hear from you all. And then please do follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn if you haven't done so already. We also have our Mighty networking site where we post a lot of the happenings across the work groups, and also invite you all to share events, resources, etc., from your organization and the work that you're doing in that space. And I'm going to pause there and turn it back over for our next steps in introducing our speaker. So food security, Nikki, are you going to take it from here? Nicole, sorry. I met her as Nikki, and I just have a hard time transitioning to Nicole. My apologies.
Okay. Thanks, Heidi. So I'm extremely excited that I get to introduce our speaker today. I've heard her speak a couple of times before, and every time I always left wanting to hear more from her about her story and her journey. Let me actually fast forward one more. Uh-oh. I'm sorry. Hang on. Do we have it? Oh, you're coming up next. Okay. Sorry, guys. Is this the slide for you? Okay. Dr. Jemima John is going to come up first before we actually hear from Elia. So you can come on up and is that on the right slide? On the right slide, please.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So as Heidi previously mentioned, there are multiple work groups within the collective, and they all work to collectively address our priority population health indicator of success. And one of the goals of the Health Equity Collective priority that is to reduce food insecurity across the greater Houston region by 5% by 2025 and improve health outcomes, including diabetes, obesity, mental health, and COVID-19. And so as part of the efforts of the food security work group, in 2020, I believe we started this round of surveys that were electronically distributed to find out what organizations were doing in that space around food insecurity, screening, resource coordination, the use of a tech platform to help coordinate care. And so we distributed the first survey in summer of 2020 and followed that up in the fall to increase engagement across our Health Equity Collective members. And then from that, we looked at the survey results and realized that organizations were either screening or not screening. Some were involved in resource coordination to various services around food insecurity. And some were not, like I said before, but they had the capacity to support these efforts, to support the organizations across the greater Houston region who were doing amazing work. And so we wanted to learn more. And that started with discussions in the late fall with Jenny Gonzalez, who I believe is joining us virtually today. And we worked really hard to find out more about what organizations were doing in that space, to do a deep dive in having conversations with them about how their organizations were working to address food insecurity, what challenges they were facing, how else they could be better assisted in enhancing outreach efforts, and what the collective could do to help enhance the work that they're doing. And so starting in the spring of 2021, we started our first round of focus groups with group 1, and then you'll see group 1, group 2, and group 3 show up in subsequent slides. And what that means is that group 1 consisted of organizations who were screening for food insecurity, and they were doing really good work presently across the region. Group 2 consisted of organizations who were not screening, but intended to do so within the next year. But they were stopped or stymied in some aspect because of various factors, COVID-19 being a key obstacle in the efforts. And so they had to postpone screening and resource coordination. And then you have group 3, which consisted of organizations who were not screening and had no intentions to, but they had the capacity to support in various ways. And that included amplification of word of mouth or efforts to share more about what organizations were doing, or to help in some sort of data management and data engaged activities around food insecurity. And so all of the focus groups that we did across groups 1 through 3 were audio recorded. They lasted about 1.5 hours minimum, about 30 minutes. And then we had to merge group 2 and group 3 because, of course, they were a smaller sample size. And so we did a lot of evaluation of the qualitative data using, data management software, and we routinely discussed what we found through these qualitative findings. And so this is just a visual representation of what that process looks like, that flow of data engagement across the various organizations. And so in all, for group 1, we interviewed 22 organizations who were doing work in that space. And Dr. Moreno will be talking about one of the key themes that we found within group 1. So I'm not going to talk about the other themes in depth at all, but for one of the themes that we found out across group 1 was that cultural factors impacted screening efforts. And so some of the themes that we saw within this broader area was that staff diversity and multicultural support mechanisms in the form of bilingual translation services, or perhaps having resources that were translated already in the client's language, things like that were absent. And so it made it sort of difficult for that patient carer communication pathway to flow efficiently. Immigration status, and I'm sure that you guys have probably heard this in your space, where people might not be willing to tell you more about themselves because they're a little bit hesitant of what the legal repercussions might be. And then, of course, mistrust in the healthcare providers and the people that you're talking to about your health needs. And then, of course, woven through these various subject materials was the idea and this general theme of stigma, right? How am I perceived because I need help? And of course, when you are part of the underserved population, oftentimes there is this this stereotype in terms of how you're treated or how you think others see you. And so that made us want to just dig deeper into this topic, and thought it would be a very wonderful moment to seize on this opportunity and have speakers within this space share their expertise on this material. And so with that said, I am going to turn it over to Nicole, who's going to introduce our speaker to talk about one of the most prominent themes that we've seen across the data, which is Stigma in Food Insecurity.
Now. As I was saying earlier, I am extremely excited to have the opportunity to introduce our speaker today. I've heard her a couple of times before, and I've always wanted to continue and hear more of her journey and her experiences. Elia Moreno is the author of Permission to Rest and Living Intentionally, a book that depicts her own personal journey and hard-earned insights on the importance of adding value to the lives of others in just 90 seconds. She currently serves as the executive director of the Texas Christian Community Development Network. In addition to her role as executive director, Elia serves as the founder and CEO of Living Intentional Ministries. Elia is also the national program director for Beagle Communication across barriers and holds the position of National Director of Community Outreach for the No Excuses University Network of Schools, a growing network of 250 schools who promote college readiness for all students, especially those living in poverty. Elia serves on many boards and committees. She is bilingual and a master at assisting organizations and individuals who seek to implement fresh ways to connect with those living in poverty. Elia was selected as a 2015 USA Characters Unites Award winner by USA Network, the winner of the 2016 Sutton Link Community Impact Award, as well as bestowed the privilege of being named 2016 Amarillo Beta Sigma Phi Woman of the Year. Most recently, she was honored with the 2017 Amarillo Hispanic Heritage Lifetime Achievement Award. Please help me welcome Elia Hernandez Moreno.
That was a lot. Thank you. Good morning. I cannot stand back here. I try, but can you hear me? Does this is working? So I apologize. Did I mess something up?
No, I'm gonna
Okay.
cut your slides up.
Okay. I'm so glad to be here. I'm in a different time zone. I worked for 5 days in Portland and then I flew to Vegas to work a couple of days there. And then I got in at 2 a.m, I believe yesterday. So I'm still going to bed at 2 a.m. and then waking up at 4:30. So I have 2.5 hours of sleep. So bear with me. I'm so glad to be here and I'm tired just reading all of that. Wow. She is correct though. I have 4 jobs because I have 4 children. So each one requires a job and they all want to go to school and they're all doing all the stuff. So here I am working 4 jobs. And they all kind of go together. It's all about poverty. I'm kind of stuck because I don't see my screen in the back, but maybe I can open my laptop and use that just so I can keep track. Will that work? Do you like me being this close? Or are you uncomfortable because I'm right here in your face?
Yeah.
Now we'll see if I can get this on. Okay, maybe. Yes. So I'll run through really quick if I'm allowed. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So a director of community outreach, it's a network. It was created in California. They have since moved to Texas. We serve about 250 schools across the state of Texas, and we work under the philosophy that every child has the right to be prepared to go to college if they choose to. And we know that food insecurity is one of the top issues because we cannot learn when we're hungry, right? How many of you cannot function without coffee? Right? Imagine food, not having food in your belly. And my first 2 books are Living Intentionally and Permission to Rest. Living Intentionally is how I got wrong. Everything I got wrong when I started serving people living in poverty. I assumed I knew what I was doing. I assumed I was compassionate and giving until I learned that poverty is not an umbrella and everyone struggling with poverty falls underneath that umbrella. We have a diverse types of poverty in our country. And my hope is to allow you to see how diverse it is. And then about 5 years in, because I jumped in completely completely to serve, I started to struggle with fatigue. Even though I knew this is my purpose in life, it was hard for me to get out of bed and say, hey, let me get up and serve, because I know that's what I'm called to do, right? That's my passion, that's my purpose, that's my calling. I struggled with compassion fatigue, and my publisher says, you write what you struggle with. And so I wrote the book, Compassion Fatigue, and it touches how to allow self-care in your world, self-management, and how to build resiliency. And all three of those topics, after researching for about 2 years, the number one in each one of those categories is to stay connected. Do you have that person that you're able to have a conversation with about what's going on in your life? And it really is, how do you work your way from compassion fatigue, when you identify that, to compassion satisfaction? And then my second job is National Program Director for Communication Across Barriers. It's an international company, and we create poverty-informed communities around the globe. And I was teaching for 4 days at Portland State University with this company just last week. And then in my own community, out of a poverty initiative, I created Living Intentionally Ministries, because I knew that in our community, we had a wonderful GD program, but it was for traditional students. So anyone that did not have the capacity to submit 25 hours a week to be in class, or even a 2-day orientation to get started, no matter how bad you want to achieve an education, they were not going to be able to access that. So we serve currently about 550 adult students that are non-traditional. They can work from home, they can come in once a month, we can print worksheets if that works better for them. So it is for non-traditional students. And then my next job is I serve as executive director to a state agency called Texas Christian Community Development. And we work across the state of Texas and outlying states like New Mexico, Colorado, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. And the hope is to teach the importance of relief. We have to have nutrition in our body. We have to have shoes and clothes and things like that. But we must take it a step further and couple it with restoration in hopes to empower people, or allow that road of empowerment, so that we're able to cycle out of poverty, whatever that poverty looks like. Because of Texas Christian, I was recruited about 2 years ago by a foundation here in Houston to come in and identify 5 to 6 neighborhoods to see what was needed in order to create a tipping point where we could better serve people that were struggling with hunger, that were struggling with housing, and just any type of poverty. And out of the 5 to 6 neighborhoods, we did community listenings and things like that, focus groups. We identified a neighborhood, and it is on Beverly Hills Street, right across the street from Wisdom High School and Pilgrim Middle School. And there's this gentleman by the name of Mark Owens, which is the founder and CEO. He was raised here in Houston, got into some trouble, served 10 years in prison. And when he finally was able to leave prison, he had a conversation with God and said that he would do everything that he could to make sure that not one child within an 8-block radius of his nonprofit would ever see the inside of a cell. So because of that, I now have, this is the neighborhood. Because of that, I now have 5 jobs. Those are some of our babies. I now serve as marketing and development director for True Ring Leaders here in Houston, Texas. So my hope is to move here the end of July, beginning of August, in order to really be within the neighborhood. And in community development, we say incarnational living. It's not, anybody know of a turkey tosser? I was a turkey tosser before I knew I was a turkey tosser, right? I would be part of a church group, or a group that wanted to do something for those people living in poverty, because I didn't understand poverty. So I would go and toss a turkey over the fence, come back to my neighborhood, pat myself on the back and said, man, you did a good job. And then I would go back to the neighborhood every year. And then at some point I became jaded, and I used to criticize and say, well, can't feed their kids, but there's two dogs in the backyard. Or she has her nails done, but there's no food in the refrigerator. And I'll continue and explain a little bit more about my stereotypes and judgments and stigmas and misconceptions about people living in poverty. So if you have a phone, or if you have a piece of paper, you can take that out now. We'll do some activities throughout it. The presentation, I know I have a short time, so I'm talking really fast. And I can talk faster, so I will at the end. And I might ask somebody to lock the door so nobody leaves, so I can get an extra 5 minutes. So I am an introvert. I want you to know that from the beginning. I have no problem standing on stage in front of thousands of people, but I am an introvert. So if you would have started this session with an icebreaker, I would have pretended my phone rang and I would have stood out in the hallway until you were done with your icebreaker. Do I have any fellow introverts in the room? Okay, if you are an introvert, this is not an icebreaker. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. What you're writing, the activity you're doing is just for you. Nobody's going to look at it aside from you. So if you don't have pen and paper, get your phone, okay? So I'm going to be transparent. I don't know how to present without you seeing my whole life right on the table, right? I know that the levels of communication is you start gently with saying, this is my name and this is my title, exactly what Nicole gave. But I start with telling you level 3 of disclosure. And if you feel uncomfortable, I'm sorry. I'm still going to give it to you. So I'm going to start with my heartbeats, why it is that I do what I do. And here they are. I have 4 children. My baby is 32 years old, and she is the reason I know how to love. And this is my first grandbaby. I thought I knew how to love until I had a grandbaby. And then here he is. His name is Tristan. My second grandbaby is Juliancito. He lives in Denton, Texas with his mom and dad. And here is my 4-month-old grandbaby girl. Her name is Sunny. And educators is any practitioner, educator is why I do what I do. There's too much on our school system, I believe. And then there's things continually happening to our educators. And they are the reason some of our children eat. They are the reason some of our children survive the lifestyle, the lived experience that they're going through while in school. So what are your heartbeats? You can jot down, and I'll give you 15 seconds to jot down. What is it that gets you up in the morning? You already noticed I'm greedy with my time because I gave you a whole 15 seconds. So let me share my heartbreaks and where I am this morning. You already know that I'm tired, right? It's 2.5 hours of sleep. And I don't drink coffee, but I do eat chocolate. So I did eat chocolate this morning. That counts as caffeine, right? I recently got divorced. I was married for 33 years, and that is a heartbreak of mine that I believe will last forever. I walk into a room with a label of shame. I believe I have a scarlet letter with the letter D. And that is something that I work through. In 2009, during recession, I looked for employment because our company was shutting down. I had worked for 16 years and had 4 years before I could retire at the age of 42, 43. That didn't happen. Submitted 45 applications and did not receive 1 response. I internalized that and started to believe that there's something wrong with me. Never once did I pause to think, the whole country is in recession. Everyone is flying, right? I internalized. And when I talked to my friends, they would say, you're going to be fine. You're great. You'll find something. Don't worry. So I stopped talking to friends and I started talking to food. And I went from a size 4 to a 14 in 2 months. Not that there's anything wrong with a 14, but in my life, I've had 4 children. And 2 weeks after I gave birth, I was back down to a size 4. So even today, even though I have lost the weight, I still struggle with weight. So an unwanted label that I have is overweight. So you'll see me adjusting my dress, loosening the side, gathering this, and that's where that comes from. We all have labels that are wanted and all have labels that are unwanted. Children and people living in poverty, those unwanted labels are magnified. And those labels look like hunger, eviction, disconnect notice, shame, not enough, right? This is my sister, Dee. We look a lot alike, and she traveled with me for about 2.5 years after she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in her liver. And she passed away in April, and my heart will hurt for the rest of my life because of the loss of my sister. And it comes in waves. If you've lost someone, it comes in waves. This morning I woke up and I saw a picture of her, and I don't apologize for my emotion, right? of her in a limousine in her wedding dress. So I posted that on Facebook, and it hurts my heart. It hurts my heart. But I know for a fact that she would be right here with me if she was alive today, encouraged by the food bank. I was wowed when I walked in, encouraged by you that you would give time up, you online. I don't know where the camera is, but that you would say, let me put some time aside to learn how to better serve those I have said yes to. If you are here today or on screen, you have said, yes, I choose to be a servant leader. And when you say yes, you say, I decide every day to put others before myself. What are your heartbreaks? What are you struggling with in this moment? You'll write that down. 15 seconds. So now we're going to, my hope is to touch on at least 4 of what I teach on. My seminars are typically 6 to 8 hours long, and Nicole only gave me like 36 seconds. So it's her fault, not mine. I won't own that. So I'm going to put some words on the screen, and it will allow you to see after we pause after these 4 words. So the instruction is, when you see the word on the screen, and I'll read it to you, I want you to write down the first thing that comes to mind. And then when we're finished with the 4 words, then I'll give you 15 seconds to kind of just debrief and look to where you are today. It will give you an idea of why you're receiving the information that I'm giving to you today. If something has happened, that you have a rent house and the tenant that you have, you need to evict, and in your mind, you have these stereotypes and judgments. Well, if he would get a job, it wouldn't be like this. Then you're going to receive this information differently than if you just gave someone some food and they were very grateful about it, right? A lot of times our emotions dictate whether we're willing to serve or not, and how we're willing to serve, right? So you ready? You'll have just a few seconds to, and make sure you write, don't think through it. Just write the first thing that pops to your mind. First word, poverty. Next word, emotions. Next word, drama. Next word, fatigue. Take 15 seconds and read what your heartbeats are, what your heartbreaks are, and the first thing that came to mind when these words came up, to allow yourself to see, where am I right now? Where do I sit? How do I feel? Are we good? Okay. I don't do icebreakers, remember? So this is not an icebreaker. Nobody cringe, nobody run out of the room. One of you ladies, can you stand back there, guard the door, make sure nobody leaves? I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to follow my instructions. It will take a whole 6 seconds, okay? I want you to close your eyes, follow my instructions. Release your shoulders, roll them back. Take a deep breath. Unclench your jaw. Release your tongue from the roof of your mouth. You can open your eyes. How many of you had your tongue on the roof of your mouth? You're carrying stress or tension. You've had drama today. You're thinking about who's picking up the kids. I forgot to pay for parking or whatever it is that you're thinking, right? Or you'd rather be at Panera's or a Cheesecake Factory, or right? You forgot your coffee, or your coffee shop was out of pumpkin spice. So you're not going to hear anything I say, right? I want to start with probably the toughest topic in our country, the most critical topic in our country right now, and that is poverty. We have different types of poverty, and I will be able to, I teach through case study, and I want you to give me the opportunity. How many of you have heard me speak before? How many of you wanted to throw stuff at me while I was giving the case study? Because I'm going to let you know my judgments, my implicit bias, the stereotypes I hold, right? We know what we know about poverty by what the media teaches. Nobody graduates anyone understanding the history of poverty in America. Not one profession. I don't care who you are. We do a chapter or a day on maybe submit 10 community hours? Yes, yes. We're briefed through what poverty is, but we don't understand the history of poverty in our country. So these are the ones that I typically teach on: generational, situational, student poverty, homelessness, poverty of self, multidimensional poverty, depression era poverty, immigrant poverty, recessional, relative, mental, and COVID era poverty, which is the new poverty. People living in generational poverty were the first to get hit once the shutdown happened, and they will be the last to recover. And it will take 8 to 10 years to get them to the place where they were before COVID. Some of them did not survive. Generational poverty is typically family has never owned land, highly mobile, low literacy. These are the attributes to someone struggling with generational poverty. So I'm going to start with a case study. And remember the rules. You don't get to throw something at me or be mad at me or walk out until I'm done. And then we can have a conversation and I can clarify what you feel is wrong with what I said, okay? So will you give me that opportunity? Okay, so I have like 15 minutes, so I'm quickly. 15-year-old girl goes to her educator and says, I'm quitting school. Her educator says, you don't want to do that. You're going to want a job someday. The young girl says, no, I don't want a job. When I first heard this case study, I was, what do you mean you don't want a job? Are you wanting to live off the system? Are you lazy? Do you not care about school? That was my thought when I first heard that. The young girl does not listen to her educator. She quit school anyway, and it isn't long before she is in the hospital giving birth to her first child. Did not have access, because of the poverty that she lived in, to nutrition or prenatal care. So the child only lived a handful of hours. And she was ready to leave the hospital, get well, go home, and try again. Again, in my mind, my thought was, you're just wanting more money from the government. That's why you're trying to have more children. Fast forward to the age of 26, she has had 6 pregnancies, 2 living children, and she's living in her car. Starts to get cold, so she goes to her coworker and says, do you know of a place that can help me with a housing voucher? Because it's getting cold. And the coworker says, I actually went to an agency down the street that helped me with my light bill, and they have this new program that they'll help with a housing voucher if you start working on your GED. And the young girl, the 26-year-old girl now, said to her, I'd rather live in my car. I was spent, completely spent. How in the world do you choose to live in your car when someone's giving you the opportunity for housing? So I want to come back to the age of 15 when she told her educator, no, I don't want a job. What does a job mean to us in middle class? A job means opportunity, success, what I've gone to school for, time off, retirement. I'm able to take vacation. I'm able to pay rent. I'm able to provide. That is what a job means to us. A job to someone in generational poverty. In our country, we internalize poverty. So me as a person in generational poverty, I start to believe I am deficient. I don't understand that it's the situation I'm living in that is deficient, not me as the person. So I put myself in isolation because I feel like I don't belong. Maslow's hierarchy of needs states we're all born with this innate desire to belong. It doesn't say if you have money or if you're born into middle class, you have the right for that sense of belonging. If you are human and you are born with that innate desire to belong. And if I'm born into generational poverty, I internalize that poverty and I start to believe I am deficient. So I'm in isolation. I want to belong, but I don't know how to belong, right? I don't have a middle class lived experience, and I typically don't know people in middle class. So this is where I feel like I am, right? Now let's go to her at the age of 26 when she says, no, I don't want an education. What does an education mean to us in middle class? It means opportunity, success, time off, our purpose in life. This is what we dedicated our life for, right? And what does education mean to someone in generational poverty? It means stress. It means I don't belong. This is where I am. I don't know education or the benefit of education because I dropped out of school at 15. So I don't know how to help my child in education, but I want my child to belong. And I want you to hear this. I'm not asking that you understand, or I'm not asking you to condone, rather. I'm asking that you understand. We judge what we don't understand, right? So can we remove judgment, right? When I've gone to turkey toss, I'm ate up because there's 2 dogs in the backyard. I don't ever tell mom, like, that really irritates me, mom, that you got 2 dogs in the backyard and you can't feed your kids. Does she know? Yes, she knows. I don't have to speak words because 93% of communication is nonverbal, right? It's nonverbal. Have you ever gone to a party or been somewhere and you know someone doesn't want to talk to you? Anybody, right? Do they go up and say, hey, Wes, how are you? I don't want to talk to you. We'll see you Monday, though. Is that how it works? No, you know. Mom knows when I'm judging, right? She knows when I'm judging. So when her son, Josh, comes home from school and says, Mom, my friend, Jacob, got a puppy for his birthday, and his name is Spot, and he is so cute, and our teacher said he could bring him to show and tell. I am so excited, Mom, to see that puppy. When I go to the store 2 weeks later, Mom in isolation, and there's someone giving away puppies in the parking lot, am I going to look at my budget to see, can I afford a dog collar? Can I afford dog food? Can I afford a vet? Can I afford shots? Can I afford to get him neutered? No. I'm going to take that puppy home because that's the only thing I know where my son's going to belong. How much, and if you've heard me before, you cannot answer, not even you on virtual world, wherever you are, don't put it in the chat. How much do we spend collectively in the United States on dog care per year? Anybody have a guess? And only if you haven't heard me, you can answer. Anybody? Nobody has pets? A year. At collectively as in the United States. 1 billion. Yeah. Is that what your thought is? In our country, we spend $93 billion on dog care, 248 million on dog costumes for Halloween. Virtual world, you heard that right. 248 million. And I am saying to Mom, you can't belong. You don't deserve a dog. When we as consumers have said, this is crucial to our society where we're spending $93 billion. So we are affirming, you are correct, Mom. You are deficient. And here I stand. If Josh is off for spring break or Christmas break or summer break, And he's wanting to play this new Atari game, Asteroids or Pac-Man, or right. You can tell I'm old by my games, right? Mom may take some money out of her light bill to, and how many of us are judging? I'm judging, right? And her desire is not to be crooked or to take advantage of anyone. Her desire is to allow her child a sense of belonging. So she'll figure out what she needs to do about the electricity because she wants her son to be part of that conversation at school when he gets back. I'm not asking that we condone, I'm asking that we understand. I want to belong. I am yelling, saying, please allow me a sense of belonging, right? Our disconnect is when we're judging. There's no way for us to build relationship. And like I said, we don't have to say it verbally, right? How much do we spend on Atari rentals? What's the game thing now? There's a number, PlayStation 5, kind of like iPhone 27. Wow. Oh, Atari didn't have numbers, did we? No, it was just Atari, right? How much do we spend? $11.7 billion every month. And what we're saying when we're judging and criticizing where there's a PlayStation in a home is you're not good enough. In our world where our desire is to qualify people as worthy, before I see you, before I choose to help you. Again, I'm not asking that we condone behavior. I'm asking that we pause to understand that mom wants to be a part of too, right? And we all have this line, right? Everybody has a line. Like, what's keeping you? I just submitted my 3rd book. It's called By the Water's Edge, and it's how to better serve people living in poverty. And sometimes the question is, if you made better choices, I'd be happier to help. Or if you were more grateful, I'd be happy to help, right? I'm mad at Nicole right now because I have like 5 minutes. So I have 2 stories I want to tell you, but I think I'll only have time for one. Was helping a young woman with a 4-year-old child for about 1.5 years, and we finally got her into stable housing where she could walk to work, and there was a daycare where she could take her child to work. And she had come in on Wednesday. We had applied for SNAP benefits, and she had gotten approved. Gave her the little polka dotted washcloths and rug, you know, to match the shower curtain, all of that. Everything was kumbaya. I was happy all day, patting myself on the back. I did good. And then Friday comes around and Carol's back in the office and I'm getting ready to go out of town and it's 4:45. So mentally I was done at like 9:45 that morning, right? Maybe it's only me. And I was ready to go, and the secretary buzzes and says, Elia, Carol is here. What could Carol possibly want? Carol! Did I add value or did I take value? Y'all are critical. I just said her name. You have 2 choices in your day through every interaction. You have the opportunity to add value or to take value. You go to the store, you put your drink on the counter, your phone rings, you answer it without saying a word. You say to Kim, you do not matter. You are not important. I do not see you. You are not worthy. Same scenario, your phone rings and you turn it off for 90 seconds, a 90-second interaction. You say to Kim, you are important. You matter. You don't have to speak a word. It's that simple. Right? I know this. I work all over the country. I travel 300 days out of the year. So you can judge me on this story I'm about to tell you, because when I called Carol and she came to the door, instead of Carol coming to the door, it was the 4-year-old baby girl. And it was like I got pinched in the stomach because I know better. But sometimes we wake up and we are so full of self, vanity, arrogance, pride. Don't you know my title, my name, the kind of purse I carry, the house I live in, the car I drive, the group I belong to, the church I go to. And I'm tired of giving to you because you ought to just get a job. In our country, People living in poverty work 1.7 jobs and still have to decide between paying rent and buying food every month. And please know, no one wants to stand in line and beg for food. No one. Yesterday at TRL was our last day, and I did a trauma care painting. And when children paint, typically they're not behaving, spilling paint, laughing, think it's funny, making fun of each other's painting. When I work with adults in school systems or nonprofits or ministries, typically the room is quiet because there's just so much stress and heaviness that the painting allows them just to be soothed and calm. You don't see this typically with children. And I tell you, yesterday, there wasn't one word spoken while I led the painting. A 9-year-old child came to me and said, "This was so calming. I didn't know my body could feel like this." And they only paused when the pizza came in and we were ready to feed them. We can do better when we know better, right? And we have said yes. We filled out the application. We said, "I choose to serve." We come into my office. Sorry, I'm going long. And Beth comes in and Carol sits here and Beth is in front of me. And what does a 4-year-old do in an office? She's trying to climb that wall, right? And Mom is so worried about calming Beth down that she's not telling me what she's needing. And I am like, I need to get out of here. My weekend started 5 minutes ago. And I finally tell Carol she's fine. And as soon as she releases Beth, what does Beth do? She comes around the desk, she puts her little hand on my leg, and I look down and can barely see the blue eyes because there's curls draped across her beautiful brown face. And I said, "Beth, how can I help you?" And she says, "I'm hungry." But I was too busy with myself and my data and my numbers and my report, and almost missed an opportunity to feed. And I said, "Beth, what would you like?" And she said, "Cereal." And I would buy cereal by the bag. Do y'all know what that is? I don't. So, and I gave her a bag of cereal and she wrapped her little hands around it like it was a teddy bear. And I said, "Beth, I'm about to go out of town. There's a toy box and those stuffed animals make a mess while I'm gone. Can you help me? Can you pick one to take with you?" And what does a 4-year-old do with instructions like that? She empties the box, inspecting every animal. Of course, she chooses the very last one, and it's a penguin. She brings it up to me, and I said, "Oh, Beth, that one's broken. It had an eye that was popping out of his face." And I said, "I'm so sorry. I should have not put that in there." And at 4, this baby says to me, "I'm broken too." Because one too many people like me has said to Beth without speaking words, "You do not matter. You are not important. You are invisible to me." The goal is to serve in a way where you experience compassion, satisfaction. When you are tired, when you don't rest long enough to recover, I want you to get this. It's the first chapter out of my book, Permission to Rest, is you're not able to extend compassion to another human being. Doesn't matter how your heart desires, your willingness to serve, to show up. When your passion tank is low, you're not capable of extending compassion. So we hurt more than we help. Back to the case study. At 26, she stayed in her car for 2 weeks. It started to snow. She went back to the coworker and says, "Tell me where this place is. I'll do their song and dance." Ever serve anyone that's doing your song and dance? And you're frustrated because you know they're just saying what you want to hear? Well, I don't know what I would say in order to make sure my kids got fed either. And she gets assessed to start her GD program, and they learn that she's not even able to read a newspaper, so they have to start with literacy. But because of people like you that didn't give up, that continue to show up, She went from her GED to her doctorate in 10 years. Her name is Dr. Donna Beagle, and she is the founder and CEO of the company I Serve, National Program Director for the Communication Across Barrier. Her book and her life story is See Poverty Be the Difference. We are great friends. We travel 20 to 25 days out of the year together now. We just worked in Portland together, and I fly out to Louisiana in a couple of days, I think. And we'll work there for 4 days, and then Minneapolis. And we just keep going in hopes to allow us servant leaders to look at people through a different lens, to really acknowledge, understand that poverty is not the same. I wish I had more time to go into situational poverty, to just allow you to understand that sometimes when we struggle with poverty, we can be the most judgmental about those struggling with a different type of poverty, because I say, well, I did it. Why can't you? You don't want it bad enough. You're not working hard enough, right? Or talk about immigrant poverty. There's so many types of poverty. And my hope is at some point I'll have longer time with you that I could share a little more. I'm over 1 minute. I had one more story, but if you have questions, so do you want to do questions? Do you want me to tell you my last story on how difficult it is once you learn about poverty? Okay, so I need a male to help me, and I apologize to the male in advance, and I'll be quick. And if I don't finish the whole story, it's a TED Talk, so you can just Google my name and find it. Anybody? A gentleman? Applause. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Tyler. Sorry. You're not going to say nice to meet you when I'm done, but okay. Sit right here, Tyler. Sit right here. Yeah, you are. That's the hot seat. So I work all over the country. I'm invited to speak at a gala, and it's a fundraiser to raise money for a shelter. I'm an introvert, so typically they save me a seat when I go and speak somewhere, and then they give me an extra seat for someone that's traveling with me. And I don't have anybody traveling with me aside from Jesus. And so it's a table where the seats 8. I have 2 seats, and there's 6 people seated in the other seats. And I'm telling you this story because I want you to understand, when you desire to better serve people and get rid of the judgment and stereo implicit bias, it's hard. It is hard because we all have an envelope and a line, right? Kind of like just in life. You can tell me all you want, cuss me all day long, but you better not talk about my kids. Anybody say amen? Right? Right? Or my husband or my best friend or my sister or my brother, right? We all have that line. Same thing when we're serving. We all have something that we've learned, something we don't like, some jadedness within us, some implicit bias that says to us, well, I'm going to help you all I can, but if you don't, then I'm done. And your don't is something different. Everybody has something different, right? So I'm seated here eating my food quietly, right? And the facilitator comes over, and Tyler's standing next to her, and she says, Miss Moreno, Tyler paid for a ticket months ago. We're at capacity. There's over 400. The only seat open is the one next to you. Is there any way Tyler can have your extra seat? And I said, absolutely. Took my stuff down, and then I began to sweat, thinking, oh, I'm going to have to talk to him probably, right? So do I do the chats? You know, how's the weather, where you from, all of that. But in order to do the chats, I have to pull out my courageous card first. And I say, okay, I'll pull out the courageous and we'll do the chats. We're talking for about 15 minutes. And within those 15 minutes, Tyler says, so what are you? I said, I get that all the time. I assume you think I'm Filipino. He says, yes. And I said, no, I am a child, a proud child, born to 2 immigrant parents. I was raised in a traditional Mexican home. And he crosses his arms in front of him, cross your arms, Tyler, leans back and says, wow, you are amazingly beautiful. At that point, I'm like 45, and I'm like, I don't hear that too often. How can I meekly, kindly respond? And before I can think of something to say, he says, well, for a Mexican. Anybody Latino, Latina? What's the first thing I do? This Mexican's going to jail. And my earring is off. He has no idea what it is taking me to get here. He has no idea the struggle to be a woman, to be Latina. I am livid, and I know what I'm going to say. And you Latinos out there know I'm going to say it in English and in Spanish. I know where I'm going to deck him, and I know what door I'm going to walk out of. Right now, I'm thinking, who will I call to bail me out of jail? How many of you know I'm telling truth? I have 2 girls. How dare you discredit my babies because of the color of my skin? You have no idea what it's taken my parents 17 years to get citizenship. No, sir. You have no idea what it's taken me to get here. And what do the people at the table do? They bow their head and they continue to eat because sometimes the conversation is too uncomfortable. When someone's talking about a family that you serve in a derogatory or negative way, sometimes we just chime in as well as say, yeah, you're right. Sometimes we don't say anything, right? If one of the 6 people would have just made eye contact with me, it would have been enough to know, I don't know what to say and I'm comfortable about it, but man, I stand with you. Solidarity is step 1. Please understand that. It's not the whole kit and caboodle. That's where we start. Not one person. And you know at this point probably that I'm a person of faith, so there's this small voice in me saying, don't do it. As I'm reaching to take my heels off, and I get the stance like, come on, boy. My line is my kids, my parents, and my grandparents. And it was a struggle to get to your event because my events are back to back. And who are you? Who the hell are you to tell me I am not enough? Right? I want you to know, I don't hear that I'm giving him a pass. Please don't hear that. Don't hear that. But my mama raised me right. And I will honor her by respecting my elder. And I have the opportunity to go to jail, and that's easy. I'm open for that. And I have so many business cards. If that ever happens again, I'll send you bail money. There's a stack on my desk, and I know they're not kidding because we're sisters and you know how hard it is, right? So I don't know how to respond because I'm being told, hey, you have the choice to go to jail or to stand on that stage and to teach many people that look like this gentleman how to add value rather than to take value when their population is such a high number of minority people. So I choose option 2, and I don't know what to say back to Tyler. So I say, thank you. And he continues to talk like if nothing happened. The announcer's reading my bio. I stand up, pat him on the knee. I said, that's me. And he starts to choke on a carrot or a pea because he realizes he just paid $400 to hear a Latina get on stage and speak. That's good stuff. And I get on stage and I talk about the importance of adding value, and I'm done, and I go and start to sign books, and a gentleman comes up to me and he's about 6'4". Well, I'm 5'4". He could have been like 5'6", right? Semantics. Has his hands on his hips, his long blonde hair in a ponytail, blue eyes. He looks down and he says, Ms. Moreno. And I'm telling God, I can do that once, but not twice. I'm going to jail this time. And he knows I'm serious, y'all. And the gentleman says, Ms. Moreno, it's been a long time since I felt human. Thank you for your words. Sometimes we judge one person because of their behavior, and we attach that judgment to everyone that might look or talk or behave or submit or not turn in or whatever, right? So we have a choice. We have a choice. Where's our envelope and what can we do to add value? I believe if we do what we do, whatever that is, whether it's placing cookies on a platter, opening the door for someone, handing a bag of food, smiling, connecting with love. And love is simple. Have you shown someone patience? Have you shown someone self-control? Self-control every day, y'all, every day. Do I get it right all the time? No. But when we choose every day, throughout the day, to do everything we do with love, we create an atmosphere of hope. And where there is hope, things change. Y'all, it's game on. Beautiful people of Houston, it's game on. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Tyrone.
All right. Did you guys enjoy that? You see what I mean? Now you see what I mean when I say every time I hear her, I'm left wanting more and more. And Elia, if you'll have us, we'll definitely have you back. Most definitely. Where we are on our agenda, I think we did have some time set aside for question and answer. Elia does have a hard stop at 11:30, so I would open the floor up for questions virtually. Or I don't know if there are any questions in the chat that we want to address.
Hi, we do have one question in the chat, and so far the chat has been amazing with the feedback, so thank you. What is a good resource to learn more about the different types of poverty mentioned in the beginning? That's from Fabian Garza.
So I read a lot and I have a list of about 20 to 30 books that will allow you to see the different types of poverty. Anybody read Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls? Most of the books about poverty start with, I was raised in generational poverty. And if you read the book, Glass Castle, she talks about moving from home to home. Some homes didn't have windows, some didn't have flooring, some didn't have a roof. One day they come home from school, there's 3 of them. There's no food in the refrigerator. The only thing they see is a stick of butter. So they cut it into 3 and each child has 1 square of butter. And later that day, they would find the mom eating chocolates underneath the blanket. And she talked about the grandmother passing away. They received a house and land, and they lived in the house until they couldn't upkeep it anymore. The mother, they have to get her out of bed to go to work because they know if they don't get mom out of bed to go to work, they're not going to eat that month. The mother's a school teacher. And at the end of the story, you start to pay attention, is that really generational poverty? When you learn the different types of poverty, you'll understand, no, that is not generational poverty, because generational poverty, typically people are not landowners. They don't have professional degrees. At the end of the book, it tells you that the land that the grandmother gave them was worth $1 million. That poverty is mental health poverty. So I can send that list of books to Nicole. I don't know where Nicole went. Oh, she's behind me. And then she could send it out to whoever wants it. And that's just one example of poverty. I have relative poverty and all those poverties in there.
Thank you. And we can take 1 or 2 questions in the audience. Please raise your hand and Wes will come with you with the mic. So we do need you to the microphone for the virtual people. Sorry, thank you.
Is it good?
Mic check. Okay. All right. I heard you were saying about group 1 and 2, right? From earlier in your presentation. And I was wondering, is there a list so we know who was in group 1 and 2? Because yes.
That is your information, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Phil Beckett, I really appreciate the presentation. It's a beautiful
Thank
thing.
you.
And I want to be careful with the question, because I'm totally in agreement with you, about the biases and poverty. But I want to question, you're right, we're born wanting a sense of belonging, but we're not born wanting stuff. And
No.
I want to ask you sort of culturally, do we cause some of this? Because even in the middle class, I've got friends who think they got to have a sub-zero refrigerator the size of my house, before. So we just end up driving the cost of and that sense of what it is to belong. You've got to be in this group, and it's unachievable we can't all be there. So when you put the word up poverty, I wrote down inequality. But I want, just culturally, are we also causing a lot of this to other people by in the middle class or above, just wanting more stuff?
Thank you for that question. So there's two answers to that. I appreciate that. So I think we think of when someone is cycled out of poverty, that means they have a 3-bedroom brick home in a nice neighborhood, 2-car garage, insurance, vacation, and that is not the case. I work with families all the time that have a 2-bedroom house in a small impoverished neighborhood, but it's paid off. Who's in poverty? Me that owes a huge mortgage, or the person that is a homeowner and is working? She may not have a car, but she doesn't mind taking the transit. So as I'm talking about generational poverty, I typically give the story of a reporter going to Africa asking the children, what do you want more than anything? And the child on camera is a little girl says, I want a uniform to go to school. And everyone says, oh, sweet. Right. And then the reporter comes to the United States and asks our children, what do you want more than anything? And what do our children say? PlayStation 5, iPhone 27, Nike shoes, whatever that looks like, right? And everybody's like, yeah, I'd rather help the child in Africa than the child here. But what we miss is that is our uniform. We have said as consumers, in order for you to belong, you better have the right shoes. You better have the Jordache jeans or Lee jeans. Is that still a thing, right? Are we the same age? Because you laugh at all my Atari stuff. Okay, we're sisters now. We'll exchange numbers, right? So we have to rethink. So in the neighborhood that we're working in, and we do have a coalition, if you're interested, we're having professional training every 3 months, completely free. If you're interested, I'm happy. My information was up there, and I don't know where that slide is. It's lost somewhere, but we're happy to include you to learn more about what poverty is. So in this neighborhood that we're going to spend 5 to 10 years in, it's going to be a way of life, and it's an 8-block radius, and we're not going to address housing, and we're not going to address transportation. Just because I've worked for the past 13 years across the country, and we create gentrified areas where we just push poor people out and then create another poor neighborhood, because we're all in our mindset. Let me not say all. Sometimes our thought of someone not being in poverty is living like me. And that's not true. That's not, when you have a 3-bedroom brick home house, that doesn't mean you're no longer in poverty. You could be in more poverty because your house poor now. You're just trying to keep up with the Joneses. It's not quality of life. So the hope is quality of life within this 8-block radius. Thank you for asking that question. Anybody else? No?
Can we give Elia another round of applause?
What do you think, what kind of policy works might be useful to consider? Have you ever gotten a policy question before?
So I was denied by the city to be part of the Community Connect, I believe, communities. There's a cohort, and I've begged long enough that they finally let me in. So I'm just rubbing my hands saying, woo. And people say it's impossible to change policy. Systemic things are in place, racism, and that's another one of my platforms.
Yeah.
Watch me. Don't say you can't, because I'll say, watch me. So I travel to Washington, DC once a year, and I advocate on behalf of change there. And then I travel to Austin once a year as well and advocate on, I have a couple of platforms that I like to advocate. There is nothing impossible. We can do this. It's hard though. It's muddy and it's messy, and we have to be able to push through. In the neighborhood that I'm in, the professional that came in to do the asset map found that I thought that there was a barbecue place next door. It is not a barbecue place. 10 strip clubs within a 2-mile radius of the 2 schools. There has to be some type of zoning to protect those babies. And as you look across the street where the sidewalk is, after school, you see gang members strategically placed on that sidewalk to capture our kids. And we're wondering why absenteeism is so high, right? There is policy that we can change, but we got to be willing to do the messy, long work. My hope is zoning in this neighborhood to address that in some way. And people fly through this street like it's NASCAR, whatever. Is NASCAR a thing, right? Like a, what's the other one? Formula One or whatever, you're racing or whatever. So I don't know what I'm going to get myself into, but within probably 2024, I'll address policy, and it's all according to neighborhood. You may not need lampposts in your neighborhood because they're there. So changing things like, right, you got to listen to community, where you are, what is the need there, and what is the policy we need to address. My biggest platform in Washington, DC is DACA, is the Dreamers Act, because take an hour on that one, right? So I hope I answered that a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, I just changed your slide. One more time for Elia, please. So now we are at the point of the presentation where there is a call to action. And so what you see on the screen, first of all, we hope that you have enjoyed today and our time with Elia. I certainly have. On the screen, you have some QR codes that we'd love for you to pull out your phone. The first one is related to you sharing kind of your thoughts with us. What is one action that you can take with you and change in your own daily life? Take your phone and scan the first QR code and share that with us. The other 2 codes are related to some resources and information around the Health Equity Collective and food insecurity. I would also like to ask Heidi, would you or Dr. John, would you guys like to come up and share any last words with the group? Oh yeah, we have microphones too.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Leah for sharing with us. I wanted to do this for the rest of the day. That was fantastic. We'll definitely have to arrange that. Thank you again. We will be sharing the slides and the information. I do welcome you to maybe take some time on those podcasts. We've been having conversations with some of the national groups. There's not a lot actually that's published around stigma and food security, but these podcasts do go into it. And so I think if you want to hear more, those would be a meaningful next step. And then we'll share the information and look forward to hosting more events and learning together. Just really powerful. I'm sorry that she's gone and already. I would have liked to have chatted further. But thank you. Please feel free to grab some refreshments in the back for those of you in person. Thank you for those of you in a virtual space. We did record this, so we'll be able to share it out as well. Feel free to mingle for a bit. Good to see you all. Yes, William.